Hello and welcome to the Philippines. Where should you live in the Philippines? Question that I often get asked. And my experience is that many of you have made some contact with somebody in the Philippines, and your first destination, one of your first destination, is going to be the area that he or she lives in. And there's a very good chance that you're going to get settled in that area and go from there. Anyway, I'm going to give you a little bit of a tour and discussion about that subject. And I'm using Google Earth. It's a wonderful resource and has many different things over here on the left-hand side. Different things that you can. I've got borders and labels, places. You can click on photos. I don't have that in, so that if you go to a place, if there are photos of the area, it'll show up on the side. Um, Roads I have in there. 3D buildings, I don't have that. I occasionally put that in there. Ocean. The weather, I'm not sure if that's accurate. Down here at the bottom, it has some sources for this information, including NOAA, U.S. Navy, NGA, but I'm not sure if that is up to date, accurate information, so I just leave that off there. I go to other weather sites like windy.com to look at weather. Gallery, there again, I believe would be pictures of the area that you're looking at. And I've got terrain marked down here at the very bottom. And what you need to do is they've got a place up here, sightseeing tour, and number of different things up here you can plug in. Anyway, I've got the Philippines. You put into the search box wherever you want to go, any little city or town, and you'll find it interesting to zoom in on the area that you live around the world. Some of the, like Las Vegas, has very high resolution pictures. You can actually see people walking on the street, or you can see them, still photo taken of them walking on the street. So anyway, we're going to go to the Philippines here. And there's the Hawaii Islands there, and Southeast Asia, and the Philippines. The Philippines in the Southeast Asia. Over 7,000 islands. And I've had somebody mention a long time ago comment that 7,000 islands, that's too many islands. I would have no idea where to start. Well, the fact of the matter is, most people are only going to be concerned with one or two or three islands, maybe five islands if you're going to travel a bit, maybe 9 or 15 islands if you're really going to travel a lot and you're going to dive and you really want to see a lot of things. So it really shouldn't be that confusing. And basically, you have three main island groups. You have Luzon, this northern island up here, and including these smaller islands, the Batanes Islands up here that often get hit with the typhoons. And so this is Luzon, this is Manila here. The metropolitan area, I believe, has over 30 million people there. I think it may be the most densely populated city in the world. Of course, that's a changing figure as cities change around the world. Um, Mount Pinatubo is up in this area. If you, some of you remember when it blew its top uh, back in I think 1990s, and you have Subic Bay down here. Forced the closure of the U.S. Military base there because, in fact, there are videos on YouTube. They've had like a foot of volcanic ash, and you just can't operate. It sucks that into the air intakes of the engines, and you just can't operate in those conditions. So this whole area is Luzon. The recent typhoon that came in here, typhoons usually come across this way from the east going this way. They often go north and hit Taiwan and or Japan. but that one came across the north, did a lot of damage in the north third or more, brought a lot of extra rain. I'm down here in Cebu, the island of Cebu, Cebu City. It kind of, I'll use the term, it's not a technical, scientifically accurate term, but we have the southwest monsoon going on now. So we have southwest winds coming in here, bringing in moist air from the southwest, and it's our wet season, and it brought more rain across much of the Philippines because of that, helped draw that moisture in. So although we weren't hit by the typhoon down here, it did have an effect. We had many days that it was cloudy and rained once or twice every day. Uh, I think there was only one day where it rained quite a bit, off and on throughout the day. Usually it rains for 20, 30, 40 minutes and then it's over. Later in the day it might rain for 20, 30, 40 minutes. I did a previous video about weather. There are basically four weather types in the Philippines, and I believe that video was called Weather, You Like It or Not. And anyway, where should you live? Let's get back to the topic here. The Visayas area is the islands, all of this area here, and this type of area, this middle section is called the Visayas. Got the eastern Visayas, which may get hit by typhoons. And you have the central Visayas, Cebu City here, Bohol, Negros Island here is where Dumaguete is down here, very popular place, and Panay Island up here. And then you have Palawan, which is, I've heard different people included in the Visayas, or just kind of separate off on its own. And then you have Mindanao down here, and many of you've heard about Mindanao, some of the problems down there. It is called the Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao. Now I know there's a place up here called Angeles City up north of Manila, a place called Subic Bay that is undergoing a lot of development, a lot of people moving in there. The government of the Philippines is planning to basically build a new huge city up in that area and move a lot of the government offices up there, partly because Manila is so crowded. So that is a booming area. If you like big cities like Los Angeles, Paris, New York, Manila might be the place for you. Some people will be much more comfortable in a large city like Manila. Many others of you prefer the provincial life, the country life, and there's lots of opportunity for that here. Personally, I prefer. Originally, I was going to move to Iloilo City over here on Panay Island, because guy named Mike from My Philippine Journey YouTube channel, back in 2015, before I moved here, watching his channels, and he made the statement that he had done a lot of research, and he decided Iloilo was one of the best options to move to. I've had a friend that went over there, and he didn't care for it that much, and he's moved up to the north end of Panay Island. In fact, I just put a video up about a house he just moved into and rented up here in Rojas. And forgive me for my pronunciations of some of these. I know Dumaguete right down here. This is Negros Island. Dumaguete is right down here on the towards the tip of Negros Island, very close. So you take a ferry ride over to Cebu here, and it is a big favorite of many foreigners, expats. It's a small city, but it's got just about everything you could want. A good hospital, colleges, has a boardwalk. It's right on the sea there, and a number of couple of different shopping centers, although they're not big like the ones in Manila and Cebu City. I know of a couple people who live in Mindanao, Davao down here. Davao City is where our present president, Duterte, originally was the mayor at, and he was credited with helping clean up that city in a number of different ways. I think they've got no smoking even on the streets out there. Uh, I know people that live at the very tip down here, General Santos City, and I know a guy who's going to move there soon. He met there again. He met a girl, and that girl is there. He's fallen in love with her, and that's where he's planning on moving. I know foreigners who live over here on Palawan Island in Puerto Princesa area in particular. You also have smaller islands like Bohol here, Mindoro up here. You've got Leyte and Samar over here, and I know a guy that used to have a YouTube channel, and there were typhoons that coming in here, and I had asked him once how he handled the typhoon, and he said, well, he was on the west side of the island, so the most of the typhoons lose a lot of their energy as they hit the uh, eastern bank and then go across the mountains there to the west side. Cebu and these islands here are oftentimes protected by these islands from typhoons. If you watch the hurricanes, hurricane typhoon being the same thing, different name. If you watch hurricanes come into Florida, for instance, and the Carolinas and Virginias, you understand that once they hit land, they usually lose a lot of their strength. Same thing happens here. Typhoons come in and lose a lot of their strength. In 2013, there was a strong typhoon that came through here, made its way through here, did a lot of damage in the northern third of Cebu Island and on Bohol. And these islands up here, Tacloban, I believe it's called, the city of Tacloban up here had a lot of damage. So let me zoom in on the Luzon area where so many people live up here. This Manila metropolitan area, that's where Makati is, a lot of excellent hospitals up there. I've heard from people who live down here in Batangas, and they love it down there. They tell me that the rent is relatively low. I'm not sure of the details of where they live or what type of place they live in, but they've told me that they like that area. I will suggest that about over a year ago, they had earthquake swarms. I think it was very close to this island here off the coast of Batangas, and it went on for several weeks. I think little small earthquakes. I think they had one large, a little bit larger earthquake. I have a friend. I've never met him, but got a friend that lives up in the Antipolo area up here, up a little higher elevation than Manila, and he likes it up there. A little bit cooler. Yeah, that's how you get cooler temperatures in the Philippines. Usually you go up in elevation. The temperatures across the Philippines are pretty much constant. They don't change very much all year long. They change about 10 degrees hotter in our summer dry season. And for instance, 77 is probably an average low temperature this time of the year, with 87, 88, 90 degrees the average high temperature here. Now that'll go up 5 to 10 degrees in our hotter season coming up. May usually being our hottest. May is usually our hottest month. And let's go up here a ways. So you have San Fernando, you have Angeles. Angeles City is a big draw for many expats, and I haven't been there. I've talked to a number of people, and they tell me that it is a has a big bar scene up there. Easy to get Western foods. A lot of people cater to the Western clientele who are up there, tourists and expats. You have Clark International Airport, uh, Manila Airport. The airport at Manila is one of the busiest in the world, and oftentimes has delays because they are so busy, and they're trying to move a lot of that flight traffic up to Clark International Airport, right outside of Angeles, and they're also planning on building rail lines between Manila and up in these areas. Go over here to Subic Bay. This is where the Subic Bay was, where our big military base was, and that is a huge. It is undergoing a great growth. Also, I understand. If you want cooler climate, you go up in elevation. One of your options is to go up here to Baguio. I think it was considered. I think the legislature would move up there oftentimes in the hot season. I believe it is about 5,000 feet above sea level, so you're getting up there, and I don't know the details about their airport up there. I've been told that the bus ride up there gets a little adventurous, say that. If you go on bus from any of these directions, look at all the mountains that you have to go up through. In fact, I don't know if that goes across there or not. But a lot of mountain trails and switchbacks to get up to Baguio. I do know a guy that lives up here in Cagayan Island, and I'm pronouncing that wrong, I'm sure. I asked him once, because so many typhoons come across this area, um, how he was affected by the rains and floods and that type of thing, and he told me that they lived in a valley that wasn't that affected by those usually. Now this last typhoon, he he had a YouTube channel for a long time. I think it was called Cagayan Valley and Beyond or something like that. And he hasn't put anything up. He works over in the Middle East part of the year, and I haven't seen anything from him in a long time. So I'm not sure what he's up to these days. I know somebody that moved up to one of these other towns up here, and he ended up not liking it, I guess. So I'm not sure where he's at anymore. But anyway, let's go back down here, and I think there's another YouTuber over here in a city called Naga, over in this city here, and I've been here in the Philippines about 3 years, and I used to follow a number of YouTubers over here, and he had moved to Naga, and when I first heard that, I thought he was in Naga, which is just south of Cebu City on Cebu Island, and that's not the case. So if you're going to meet somebody someplace, um, because there are towns on the various islands that have the same names, Naga being one, be sure to find out what island they're on so you don't show up, so that you make that connection. But this is all part of Luzon down here, Legazpi City. Legazpi City is named after an historical person. And look at all these other islands. They're options. They're options. Probably not good options. Most of them don't have a hospital. Medical care, probably you would have to go over to a larger island. You've got bank and boat services. You don't have the larger ferry services. So depending upon the waves and seas, would depend upon whether those ferries were running or not. You probably want to find a place that is relatively near an airport. And I think the plan is, I think they've got over 20 airports in the Philippines at this point in time, and in in the coming years, they plan to have between 40 and 50 airports operating. I've been reading about some of these smaller islands. For instance, Mindoro Island here, Mindoro Island there, and I've heard somebody comment saying they lived up there, and I've been reading about, and it's got a couple of airports. I don't know how big they are. I don't know the details, but it's not that small. It's not a large island, and it's not a small island. It's one of those in between. This island here, Masbate, and you have Masbate City here. I know a lady here. I think one of her relatives is the head of tourism or police up there, and she says they don't get a lot of foreigners up there. They get some, and it's easy to keep track of foreigners when there's so few of them because word of mouth gets out, so they know where you're at, what part of the island you're on. Come down here to the Visayas. Okay, so that was Luzon area basically. So let's come down here. So that was a real quick look at Luzon. Let's come down here to the Visayas, and that's this group of islands, and I'm not sure exactly how it cuts off, but I think it's all of these islands here, and down here, this being Mindanao down here. This island here, for instance, belongs to Mindanao. But you have a couple of large islands. You've got Panay Island, and this is Rojas right up here. Down here you have Iloilo City, which I believe is close to 500,000 people in population. So it's not a small city, but it's not as big as Cebu City. And this is Guimaras Island, I believe. This is Negros Island, and you have Dumaguete right down in this area, very popular with expats, and some expats go up into the mountains up here, up to Valencia. There again, it's cooler weather. Oftentimes they don't have to run their air conditioning, and I've been told by somebody living up there that their electricity comes from geothermal plant, and the rates are lower than what you would find in many of the cities as well. You might want to, as you decide to move someplace, you might want to check and try to find out what the electric rates are in that area. As for instance, bounce over here. This is the island of Cebu. This is where I live. Long Island, Cebu City is the capital, Cebu. And these islands right here, Camotes Islands, belong to Cebu province. And I've been over there, and there was a guy who said, hey, you should live over here, move over here, it's so much cheaper. And then my last day there, I started hearing about the electric rates over there. Now, I understand that the electric is produced by a diesel generator over there, and that your electric costs, of course, depending upon how much you use your AC and that type of thing, can be as much or more than your rent is. So if your rent is 6,000, your electric could be 10,000 pesos or $200 a month. Will vary based on how much you like air conditioning. So those are things that are important to know when you move to an area, move to a province out in the country. The whole island here has your tarsiers, your little animals that people, you have your chocolate hills up here. This island here is connected, I think, by two different roads over to Bohol. It's part of called Panglao Island. You have Alona Beach down here, They're putting in a new international airport over here. It's going to open later this year, I believe, or early next year. And I've known several people who live in different areas here. I've taken a small banca boat across from Cebu City over here to Hitafi in the north of Bohol. And there are uh, many different areas that you could live over there comfortably, relatively cheaply. They did get hit in 2013 also. They did get hit by a good-sized earthquake. It damaged some of the very old churches over there, and Cebu felt it as well. You have Siquijor Island here, relatively small island. In fact, I just found some video. I thought I had lost it, and I found some video of my trip around Siquijor Island, and at some point in time I will put that up again. My preference for living here uh, are these is this group of islands here, to narrow it down. Uh, One reason is that it's protected from the worst effects of the typhoons that come off the Pacific here. These islands take the energy out of a lot of those typhoons. Um, Cebu City, uh, Cebu City, I believe, is the second largest city in the Philippines, and has an international airport, has a new international terminal. You're connected to, therefore, you're connected. More and more international flights will be coming in here. My understanding is that I believe the Philippine Airlines is going to start direct flights back to Los Angeles again, if they haven't already, here in late 2017. The other reason I prefer this group of islands is because you have large enough cities to supply you with the needs that you would most people would need: hospitals, shopping centers. You have Iloilo City here, which is, like I said, about close to 500,000 people. Bacolod City over here has a lot of expats in it. Dumaguete down here, which is smaller but a good-sized city. Tagbilaran City over here, I've been over there a couple times. I like that city. I'm not sure why I do, but I do like that city in that area. And it's about a 2-hour ferry ride from there over to back to Cebu. You can take a ferry ride a number of different directions out of there, up to Cebu City, over to Dumaguete, and over to Siquijor, the mysterious island. Now let's jump down here to Mindanao, and that's a relatively large island, very large island as well. I've been over here to Surigao. There is, I believe this island over here is Surigao, not to be confused with Siargao, a city over here. This is a big area for surfing. You get big waves that come in off the Pacific, big surfing area over here. And Mindanao, Davao City being a big city, almost as large, very close to the same size, I believe, as Cebu City. Got a guy that comments on the channel occasionally. He lives up in the State Department of many countries will tell you to avoid certain parts of Mindanao, and that is basically the southwest area. And that is kind of a moving issue, that you've got the extreme Islamists down in some of those areas. And they have kind of ongoing, for many decades, ongoing little war in that part of the country. And you also have a number of NPA, the armed wing of the Communist Party, and they kind of hang out in different remote areas. They try to recruit people and school children in remote areas, and occasionally we'll read about a clash of the military and the NPA, the communists down there. Uh, Davao City is a large city, and very popular. Davao City is a large city, very popular with many people. Has a reputation as being a clean city, and I've got a guy that, in fact, early on in my YouTube career, he told me that from listening to some of my videos that I think if I got this right, he had decided to move from the Angeles City area to Tagum City area, and I think he told me that that area was being developed and very close to Davao City, so it's big enough to offer many of things that you would need. And I believe that Mount Apo here, uh, not so far from Davao City, is one of the highest peaks in, if not Mindanao, one of the higher peaks in the Philippines as well. I'm not sure, but I think you can do some hiking up there. So that is something to consider. So that is something to consider if you enjoy that type of thing. Um, my understanding is that there are great diving sites down here in southern Mindanao. If you want to go down in that area, most of those areas are probably safe. I've talked to a number of people that have moved and lived in General Santos City down here, and they say they feel safe. But it's like any place, you want to be aware of your surroundings. The world is changing, so you want to understand how that's affecting your local area. Cagayan de Oro, Cagayan de Oro up here is a relatively large city. Is building up and progressing, popular with many people. I think one of my subscribers, I won't mention her name. I think they're going to move someplace up in this area, up in here, I think, from the USA. And anyway, those are some of the options. In you also have Camiguin Island on the north end of Mindanao, where John from American Expat in the Philippines operates out of. Anyway, that's a real quick look at some of the options. Of course, there's hundreds, thousands of medium-sized towns and cities where one can live. For instance, for instance, for instance, Tagbilaran City over here, which I mentioned. I know a couple of foreigners, expats who live up in this area up here. Um, if you want to live close to a city but not in a city, if you want to save some money, you can go to places like Talisay City, about 9 kilometers, about 5 miles outside of the downtown Cebu city, or less than that. And it's got a shopping center or two down there. It has my bus goes down there and goes into town for 25 pesos, takes you up to SM Seaside or SM Mall and Park Mall out of there. Across on the west side, you have Toledo City over here, which is a small city, but it's close to the big city. And you have the city of Naga down here. There again, not to be confused with the other Nagas. Going north out of Cebu City, you have Consolation. You have Liloan up here. There's a number of housing developments up in this area. Consolation, Compostelo. I know expats that live further up the coast up here. Danao City. Danao actually has ferries that go out of here over to Camotes Island. That's how I got to Camotes. Carmen up here, and a number of options as you go north. Sogod, I know an Australian that owns a house up there and spends a lot of his time in Australia, part of it over here. Bogu City, as some people call it. I know a number of expats live up in that area. Medellin And there's a small island off of Medellin called Fantastic Island. I've done a couple of videos about that area. Malapascua Island, that's where I learned to scuba dive. Purple Snapper Diver Resort is where I learned, and I think it's no longer called that. And you have the larger Bantayan Island. Malapascua is primarily focused on diving resorts, but you can just go there and hang out. They have tours around the island by boat, or you can rent a motorbike driver to have you take you around the island, show you the different areas. Bantayan Island is very popular. It's more of a laid-back area. You can do some island hopping out of there. And got an airport there. You can take a small plane out of Cebu City up to Bantayan, and very popular place just to hang out. So where do you want to live? What type of place do you want to live? You should sit down and think about that. Are you a country boy? Are you a city boy? I grew up in the country, but I lived much of my life in medium-sized to large-sized cities. I am comfortable with the conveniences of a large city, although it is nice to get out of town once in a while, for sure. And make a list of your priorities. Is it important to be close to a good hospital? The bigger cities are your answer. Cebu City, Iloilo City, Dumaguete, Bacolod City, Davao City, Angeles City, Manila. Do you want to live in the country but close to a big city? I know a guy that lived down here in Bohol, and I've read about a guy who lived down here in Bohol, and here's Cebu up here. I think he had an appendix attack. He had to have his appendix removed. Although they have a good hospital there, they decided to send him over to Cebu City. So I believe it was like a 2-hour ferry ride. A nurse had to accompany him over to Cebu City to get those issues taken care of. So even though they have a hospital, a lot of these smaller town hospitals are not really set up, or the doctor is not trained in certain types of emergency cases. So understand that ahead of time. Understand that many of the medium-sized to larger cities have immigration offices. If you don't live near an immigration office, depending on what type of immigration visa you're on, tourist visa, you're going to have to travel to that other island to renew your visa every 2 months, 6 months, whatever the case may be. Shopping, if you live on a smaller island, the guy I know, the foreigners I know who live on Camotes Island off of Cebu Island, they come over to Cebu City about twice a month to buy groceries and other things that they can't find on the smaller island. They've got you'll find that smaller islands have public markets, and this guy told me they have regular availability of pork and chickens, but they only process a beef once, I think on early Sunday. So if you're not there early, you're not going to get any beef that week. So they come over twice a month to do shopping in Cebu City. So think about those types of things. If you want to travel a lot, maybe you want to be close to an airport so you can get out of town. Anyway, thank you for coming along. Please like, please share the video, please subscribe. Safe travels to you all wherever you're at, and I'll see you next time.